On Tuesday, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris will face off in their first presidential debate. Harris is already in Pennsylvania preparing with her team, while Trump is sticking to the campaign trail, where he had this to say about his opponent's strategy.
She's right now practicing. Do you know that? She's in Pennsylvania, and she's practicing for the debate. She's locked herself in a room. She's got a lot to learn.
Everyone really prepares for debate. So Bob Barnett has been in those debate prep rooms. He's a lawyer who's worked on 10 U.S. presidential campaigns, preparing candidates like Michael Dukakis, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Tim Kaine, each time playing the role of their opponent in mock debates. Bob Barnett, so nice of you to join us. Thanks for making the time for Canada.
Hello, Canada. I'm happy to be with you. I love your country.
Listen, so much has changed, obviously, since the last debate. It's now Kamala Harris instead of Joe Biden. You've got a Republican nominee who survived an assassination attempt. And we saw that the last debate mattered because that's what I think caused President Biden to make the decision, at least in part. What are the stakes going into this one, do you think, Bob Barnett?
Well, sometimes these matter, sometimes they don't. This one, I think, really matters.
Okay.
I think that it's unlike the routine 3 debates between 2 candidates who've been out there forever. We have one candidate who is a former president who, at least in the last debate, couldn't stay on script and couldn't resist. And just as recently as this week, at the court hearing, he spent 45 minutes not talking about the debate, not talking about what he's going to do for the country, but talking about the women who wronged him. Yeah. And we have on the other side a candidate who has been vice president of the United States, senator, attorney general, et cetera, but is not well known. And I think that this debate will be an important part of the process of introducing herself to the American people and establishing her qualifications. So it's unlike any debate we've ever seen, and I think for both candidates, there's a lot at stake.
So because you've done that debate prep with Bill Clinton, with Hillary Clinton, with Barack Obama and others, how would you think that Kamala Harris is preparing for this kind of debate and preparing to take on someone like Donald Trump?
Well, she has a great team around her. Most all of them are people I've worked with on multiple cycles. The goal when you're staffing a debate, and as I say, I've done 10 cycles, is to design a process that fits the candidate, not that fits the wise guy staffers that are sitting around the table.
Right.
And so they've undoubtedly designed a process that fits her needs. I would guess, and it's only a guess, I'm not involved, that they would have started with a very good briefing book with 80, 90 issues that could come up, what her positions have been, including her positions as vice president, what Trump has said, what are Trump's likely attacks, and what are her answers, and what are her attacks. That briefing book is indispensable. And on our side, at least all the times I've been involved, we start with that. We then spend time sitting at a table and talking through those materials, refining them, making them as targeted as possible, and reducing them to very short answers, because you can know everything in the world about these subjects, but when you have to give a 90-second answer, it's an art. Yeah. Then I think they probably would do sample Q&A, probably at the table, working through the questions, then go to the podiums and do 15-minute segments and 30-minute segments, tape them, review them, refine them, tape them again. And then finally, probably at this point, in the evening, to mirror the time of the actual debate, they're likely doing full mock debates with questioners, Trump player, and the candidate going through different scenarios that could come up. And that's the way you best prepare. And I think she has, from my knowledge of them, the really best people possible with her.
Do you think that, just in light of the kind of speeches that she's given, that they're going to lean on the fact that she is a former prosecutor and that she will try and prosecute Trump in that debate, or would you expect a kind of different strategy?
Well, I think that these debates can take many forms, and every answer can take a different form. I hope that she will find the opportunity to attack his quote-unquote record, rebut his quote-unquote positions, and while not violating the rules of the debate, ask questions by simply planting them. Yeah. I wonder what Mr. Trump would say about this, or right. I haven't heard Mr. Trump speak about this, which is a way of almost forcing your opponent to be talking on your territory, not his, because you don't want to leave that sitting on the table unanswered.
For sure. I know you have views about the moderator. The CNN moderators were, I think, criticized a bit because they just put the questions out there. They didn't fact check and they didn't insert themselves into the debate. What is your view on how the moderators should approach this debate?
It's not the role of the moderators to be a third candidate, but it is, in my opinion, the role of the moderators to fact check and follow up. There will be a decision made in the bowels of ABC News whether they will agree with that or not. I don't know what that decision is. But I think at the very least, when a candidate, either side, says something that is manifestly inaccurate or completely avoids a question, a good moderator follows up and a good moderator fact checks. So I hope that David and Lindsay will do that. The CNN people made a strategic decision not to do that. I think that it's important for a journalist moderator to be to take an active role in the discussion without becoming a third candidate.
Yeah, which is hard to do, but I take your point. So this is the first debate for the two of them. And I think the first time they're actually meeting in person as well. Would you expect there to be another one, or is it just too high risk for both candidates, these kinds of environments?
I would expect that this will be the only one. If Trump desperately needs it, he'll push for it, and Harris will not comply. If Harris desperately needs it, she'll push for it, and Trump will probably not comply. I don't think they will do what I wish they would do, which is for the best interests of the country and informing voters, have a full three. Yeah. But I don't see that happening given the nature of Donald Trump and given the extremely short campaign that we're dealing with here. Unlike any event in American history, this thing effectively began when she got the nomination and ends in November. Usually it goes on for 2 years.
Yeah. I know you're a Democrat, but do you think that someone has the advantage, that one of the candidates has an advantage?
Well, I think that Harris certainly has the momentum going into the debate. The decision by President Biden, which was a heroic decision, historic decision, to drop out and pass the torch to her, was followed by an amazing coalescence. Bill Clinton always says Republicans fall in line, Democrats have to fall in love. They fell in line this time and fell in love, which is very rare in the 50 years I've been involved in this. I think that the reception that followed that coalescence was remarkable. The convention went very well. The pick of Governor Walz was well received, I believe, and very wise. And he's well above water, while J.D. Vance is well below water in the polls. And so she's got the momentum. I think that her disadvantage is that she's not known, but there's an opportunity to cure that. I think, judging especially by this week's court appearances, Donald Trump is going to be Donald Trump. He clearly went into that first debate with 8 answers, and almost whatever was asked, if it was on the subject of one of those answers, he just went right into it, ignoring the question.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll get away with that again. I don't think he'll get away with that because I think David and Lindsey won't allow that. But I also don't think Harris is going to be passive about that. And she's going to point out his failure to answer and point out what the true record is and discredit lies. So he'll be debating a very different opponent than he was with President Biden last time around.
Well, it'll be fascinating to watch. Bob Barnett, I really so appreciate being able to tap into your experience and your expertise on this. I hope you'll come back again. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, happy to be with you.
And because of the danger that Donald Trump poses, not only am I not voting for Donald Trump, but I will be voting for Kamala Harris.
That's former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney endorsing Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris. That was a few days ago. Another sign of a very different U.S. presidential campaign than we're used to seeing. Her father, former U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney, has also endorsed Harris. So we will start there on our American Roundtable this week. With us today is Francesca Chambers, White House correspondent at USA Today, and Josh Wingrove, White House reporter with Bloomberg News. Good to see both of you. And Francesca, special thanks to you for you're out on the trail there, so for stepping outside and talking to us from there. Let's start with those Cheney endorsements because they were both surprising to me, frankly. Maybe Dick Cheney a little bit more because he was, of course, the former vice president for George W. But he did put out a release saying that there's never been an individual who's a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. So, Francesca, how big a deal are these endorsements?
Well, Liz Cheney had served on the January 6th committee, and she also had been primaried by a Trump-backed candidate, and that's how she lost her congressional seat. So we knew where she stood on Donald Trump. But as far as the Harris campaign goes, they are targeting disaffected Republicans in this election. You had Adam Kinzinger, another former Republican congressman, who is no longer in Congress, endorse Kamala Harris and also speak at the Democratic National Convention as well. And so her campaign, Harris's campaign, has told me that they think that there's room to grow with that voting bloc.
Yeah, it's so interesting that there is a sort of a direct appeal to these disaffected Republicans, Josh. And Dick Cheney actually endorsed Trump back in 2016, but he's obviously seen that he doesn't like Trump as president. What do you think is the chance that this will attract other people?
I think the jury's out a little bit. And remember, this is a two-way fight with Trump trotting out RFK Jr., for instance, who, of course, doesn't align with the Kennedy family on basically any issue whatsoever, but still has the last name Kennedy. And so that's been a subject of great interest over this campaign. Look, it could matter. You've got some of these prominent ones, including the former lieutenant governor of Georgia, which is a key battleground. Harris is basically hoping people will come to the polls, and even if they vote Republican on every other thing, known as ticket splitting, which has been a declining thing in America, hasn't happened. It's happening less and less. She's hoping that this is kind of making a comeback and that people will vote, even if they're Republican and they're voting Republican on everything else, that they just can't stomach the idea of Donald Trump. I say there is also an open question as to whether we'll see more of these people. The Cheneys are big names, but many members of Trump's own cabinet have been on the record in the past saying they don't think he should be back in the Oval Office. We haven't heard from a lot of them in several months. I think that's something that's up in the air here. Will those former direct Trump officials, cabinet officials, chief of staff, whatever, that have objected, either said to have objected on background, through reports or publicly in the past, come forward and give a similar message? I think it's an open question right now.
Francesca, as I said, you're out on the road. You're actually at a Harris campaign office near Philadelphia this morning. That's close to where the debate will be on Tuesday. And we'll get to that debate in a moment. But Pennsylvania is important because it's a swing state that will play a big role in who wins the White House. Can you give us a sense of what's at stake, what you're watching for in that state right now?
I'm near the office. It's not the food truck back there, to be clear. Although that might be fun. But I'm near a Harris campaign office that is in Norristown, Pennsylvania, which is in Montgomery County. Now, that is a key battleground county in this race here. Democrats need to turn out the vote in these collar counties around Philadelphia if she wants to win Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania, as you noted, is a key battleground state in this election with its 19 electoral votes. Now, when it comes to this upcoming debate in Philadelphia, one major question will be how much she goes on the attack. against the former president of the United States. She has sidestepped his personal insults when he tried to make her race an issue in a CNN interview. When she was asked about it, she said, "Next question, please." But in a 90-minute debate, when he's expected to hurl personal insults at her, which he said he thinks are fair, it will be harder for her to not get sucked into what he's saying and focus on her message and what she wants to achieve, which is to both talk about her policies and what she'd do as president, but also to rebut other things that he said on the campaign trail that she wants to bring up.
Yeah. Josh, I know you were talking to my producer before this about how much things have upended since we last spoke before the summer. I mean, you can't make this up. That's why we love politics. And that debate was such a key factor in Biden eventually leaving. So how important is it for both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump?
Yeah, Rosie, I did not make it home to Canada very much this summer. I have to admit, my plans got thrown overboard. Yeah. This is a big one. They actually have barely been in the same room before in the Senate, but like she basically has not spoken with Trump ever. Yeah. And so the stakes on this one are high. And I should note, the polls show this is a completely new race. The money that Kamala Harris is raising is jaw-dropping, and unlike anything Biden had. Those of us who've been on the trail, including Francesca, of course, we've seen a big shift in enthusiasm among Democrats for sure. It's still basically a coin toss. Yeah. You know, it is not a case where it looks like Harris has got this momentum and is like breaking away from Trump in any one situation. And it does look like Pennsylvania not only is one of the swing states, but will be the ball game. I came back from there yesterday. I think Harris will spend as much time there as any other state. So I think right now for her, she is trying to define herself and he is trying to define her. She has switched her mind about a lot of things in the last 5 years or so. When she ran for president last time, she tacked to the progressive wing. Joe Biden's deputy, he's a moderate. She's taking a lot of different positions now. Trump will accuse her of flip-flopping, try to paint her as a radical. In other words, he is campaigning against 2019 version of Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is trying to define herself as a more big tent, center-of-the-road Democrat. In other words, a Democrat who can have Dick Cheney and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you know, in the same room, for proverbially voting for her. So that's the big question right now. Polls show people still don't know a lot about Kamala Harris. They know a lot about Donald Trump, like him or hate him.
Yeah. And Francesca, that is sort of why it's so important for Kamala Harris on Tuesday, because beyond the convention, which not every American was watching, this is an opportunity for her to introduce herself or reintroduce herself and maybe push past some of those things Josh was talking about, some of the flip-flops that she's had in terms of her own policy positions.
Yeah, many Americans that I've spoken to, independent voters, undecided voters, even prior to her becoming the nominee, consistently told me they just didn't know very much about what she'd done as vice president. Now, of course, her office and her campaign would say that that's maybe because the media hasn't covered it enough. Sure. There's also things, though, about the pandemic where she wasn't out in America in the same way that we would see vice presidents or even the president earlier in the election. But now she's the one who's the candidate. They do have questions about her policy. So whether people watch the debate directly, there will be clips airing on television. Of course, Josh and I will be doing stories as well as other reporters. And based on what I'm hearing, voters will be looking to that to hear more about what she'd do if she was elected.
And this comes, Josh, just last word to you, as the judge in Donald Trump's hush money trial delayed the criminal sentencing until after the election, which I guess is good news for him because it at least puts that sort of out of people's minds again.
It's great news for him. We're waiting on two things in that case. One is his ruling on how the Supreme Court's immunity ruling is affecting it. And then, of course, the sentence itself. Both are now going to come after the election. So Trump will be sentenced, assuming that the case isn't affected by the thing, which we don't know, by the ruling. But if he is sentenced, he'll be either sentenced as the president-elect or as a recently defeated candidate. We just don't know. There are so many moving parts on this one, but that's another thing that I'm looking for on Tuesday is how much Harris, a former prosecutor, leans into his 34 felony conviction.
Yeah, it's going to be good to watch. It's going to be a good debate. Of that, I'm sure. The last one was too, but for a whole other bag of reasons. Francesca, thanks for making the time on the road there. Josh, always nice to see you. We'll talk again soon, you guys. Have fun down there. We've got a